Dumelang ra amogela mo go Daily Thetha on SABC 1. As Libana, we are really adhering to the measures of not having anybody in studio with us right now, social distancing, and making sure that we're keeping to the measures that the president has put out for all of us. Nakalibitso ke na Nicolette wa gamashile ngwana wa kwa Bush Pakrich mapulaneng yana re tshwaleng lona leme la matsogo ke sesi andiswa wa ga ke bashe
ngithi nami ngibingelele emakhaya komncane nokomdala igama ledwa kami ucwaleni usibe uzizwe umunje lo namhlanje sithi sicela ukumkhumbuza ukuthi njoba we are going through i-COVID-19 ngicela ukuthi mkhumbule ukuthi ingane sihlale ekhaya singazuli isigwala emgaqweni phinde futhi mkhumbule ukuthi the importance of this time is hygiene ugeza izandla kaningi ungakhathali phinde futhi ubuyele the important one ukuthi do not vakashela people ngalesi sikhathi sicela ukuthi asebenzise lesikhathi ukuthi sifunde incwadi entsha to get to know ourselves as umndeni but also use this opportunity to maybe even get to know your partner better.
I think Melody, the biggest thing in South Africa right now is that we've emphasized quite a lot about the use of sanitizer. Sanitizer, you can still wash yourself with antibacterial soap. It's very important, guys, that all of us together as a nation because that's how we're actually going to stop the spread of this. That for me is really important. Now remember that just because COVID doesn't mean Daily Thetha is not going to be having the conversation with you. We still want you to please send us your videos and your voice notes on 072-316-1329. That is our WhatsApp line. Just make sure if you are sending us a video.
And I'm going to put the video needs to be 30 seconds and send anything that you think is important, but please just keep it ngomsebenzi. Ayokunye lokho kuphela.
Arlebele taba ya lekgono na we know gore ke yona kgwedi ya ditokelo tsa batho and we're looking at batho ba berekang that work, that activism work, that being able to stand up for the rights of South Africans, whether it is socio-economic issues, whether it's political issues, or really just simply something that really stands up and screams gore the rights that are enshrined in the Bill of Rights are actually recognized in South Africa. Now we've seen activism since during the struggle apartheid in South Africa. But the activists South Africa that are fighting for today and for tomorrow.
And also looking back at how far we've come and what role activism has played in South Africa. How do we identify a person who's an activist? Or what are the key things that help someone who says, activist? Today we get to learn as we get to see veterans like Seth Mazibugo, who will come onto the show a bit later and chat to us about his journey as he played a very pivotal role in 1976 during of course the post-apartheid system as a Puma to now. How has he transitioned? And he'll teach us a bit more about that later on the show.
But I think right now we can go to him and see activism. Let's go and see what Thetha had to say.
Activism is actually a vigorous and focused way of participating, and either in a form of protest or in a form of, spending your time in mostly a particular issue or particular issues. I regard myself as community activist. And what do I look after? It's social justice, equal opportunities. I also talk of I also look at, the issue of the land issue and the protection of basic human rights of our people. Now, I'm active in that space. You could be active in agenda issues. You could be active in education issues, But what is more important is that it is where you dedicate a lot of your focus. And of course, it also requires that you must do a study and have a knowledge, a deeper knowledge of the act that you are in. If you are in scene 1, act 2, you must be able to know what is in that scene and what is in that act that you are active in. Basically, that is what activism, I would, in its simplicity, could actually explain. Being active should not be about yourself, but it should be about us and those, or about those issues that you are representing, those issues that you are challenging, those issues that you are promoting, protecting, even preserving, for that matter. So it is very important that now the issue of values, the issue of integrity should be at the center a political activist should not be about his pocket, should be about his people or her pocket, not his, it should be more about, the people that, and even not about that much of politics. It should be more about the people that you are protecting and also promoting.
It's very interesting, Gurnan, that they said activism, and I think it's quite an important one, Melody, because he's specifically speaking about issues, being able to look at South Africa and say, right now, what are some of the issues that Naluweni can tap into? I found a niche because I found, the issue of financial illiteracy in South Africa being a big thing, and we know Orosesi and Iswakebashe also stands up for the deaf community, right? And I think it's important for us, what is actually happening. He says something very important. He says you must know the facts. So you must read. You must know the act, because you can't be caught in a situation where you don't know what you're talking about.
And to even add to Loko, about serving. And Bob spoke about how people should serve the people and not their pockets. And something that we're learning, because a lot of people have been seen to being the takers and not the givers. But we learn as we are here. But I guess one with some abantu batini about, of course, which is activism.
If I had to simplify the concept of activism and being an activist, and I always feel like emphakathini kwingingqi zethu sihleli nabo abantu who are unsung heroes. Igama lami ndingiluthokazi Ndlazi, and namhlanje neDaily Thetha sibuza abantu esitratweni nge-activism. Do they know what this is? Bakhona na abantu abangabakhomba but these are activists. These are people who drive a cause and are helping the community. Sifuna ukubava ukuba bathini nabona nge-activism. An activist oyaziyo emphakathini wakho in your community nje who fights for people's rights and ngubani wenzani?
Now in my community there's no one who's an activist. Currently abantu besifazane bayahlukumezwa emphakathini yethu ngoba usually men think that they are superior when it comes to these gender things. So la ngiqhamuka khona abantu besimama bathathelwa phansi ngoba nje most of them, they don't work. So most of them, they depend on men for survival. So men think that they are superior than them.
Ngazi Obama win Mandela, ngazi the likes, but abasekho abantu abanjalo. I want people to live better in South Africa. I want to create employment in South Africa. I want to get rid of poverty in South Africa. Create opportunities for small businesses and all that.
I think they really should get compensated for that. It's not fair that Badra Miracle or at the end of the day, they don't get anything out of it. You don't really need to rely only on government. I mean, it starts with you. What are you doing as a youth, to empower yourself? Then when you go into government, when you really need, them to add something on what you already started.
To advise a person is not an easy thing. Because if abanye ufuna ukuthi uhambe nayo umbonisa into ukuthi how to register a company, that's my issue. Then wamelo hambe nayo umbonisa ukuthi no sihlale elayinini. Don't pay somebody ozokutshela ukuthi nginike 2,000 rand, which of uhlale elayinini. Then you come with your own papers, then register company. So abantu baningi uzothini cela unike imali engaka uyo ozohlala elayinini usaka nemalini kuyo uthatha 175 leyo yokuregister company. Just think of the change lapho ukuthi malini yabona ukuthi yena uyasibhadala. That's why I'm saying please pay those guys.
I don't believe that legitimate activists want monetary benefit from their humanitarian gestures. I mean, there and there we can be recognized, but I don't believe it's of utmost importance.
And God bukhona umuntu ophila eMzansi Afrika ongathi akawazi umzekelo womuntu who was an activist through and through. Umama uWinnie Madikizela Mandela. She didn't die, she multiplied. Nawe ke yensiqinisekisa ba wenza ngohlobo.
Nathi siyabona-ke ukuthi abantu abasha bathini emgaqweni baveze imicabango yabo, and it's such an interesting part that they mention about how they see what we call activism and how some people have benefited financially, abanye haven't. But this way, after the break, we get to speak to Sis Palisa Madi, who is in the legal frame when it comes to human rights, but also she's an activist, and we want to understand again what does it mean to her. But konke lokhu besibuya.
right here on SABC1. Ke yona Daily Thetha. And topic e le gone ko rena re botsa rena, who are the human rights activists of our generation? Now specifically now we want to look at yona go rena activism ke eng and what is the role of activism right now in our society. Now if you look for a classical definition ya gore activist ke eng, ke motho gore practically o go fast wa bereka to be able to bring some sort of social and political change. Now we're going to be speaking to Palesa Madi, who's a legal activist and deputy director at the Center for Applied Legal Studies. Later on, also to Witumelo Masipa, who is a communications officer at Section 27 and a youth activist. What is activism kobona and what role does it really play in society? Understanding Africa, the youth are the hardest hit by gender violence issues, unemployment issues, drug addict issues. So how then do we actually make sure that activism plays an important role? Tumela Sesipalesa, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
We're good, thank you.
Yes, siyajabula sisi to giving us a chance ukuthi ube nathi lana ku Daily Thetha. Phinde futhi sibonga ukuthi ne technology doesn't limit us because now we're able to still communicate and educate umzansi from the comfort of your own home or office. Sithi singena endabeni siswami, umbuzo wokuqala ukuthi when you speak about being an activist, what is your definition as wena as Auspalisa la ukhona in your field legally?
I think very similar to what Nicolette just said. I think how I define it is essentially when anyone does any work or puts in any effort to bring about a positive change in relation to our political and social context. And people use various tools and strategies to try to achieve such change.
Melissa, I like what you've just said because anyone can be an activist. Now, we've seen in South Africa a lot of times when I activists and then people come and say, hi, that's not an activist, that's a celebrity. Hi, this, what is actually, who can be an activist? Is it anyone?
Sure. I think we must be very careful, I don't think there's a closed category of what constitutes an activist because we all decide to take up a particular cause and that might be personal to us, that might be a result of our environment, that might be as a result of an amount of privilege that we have, a passion. So I don't think there's any closed category or description of what an activist is, because we're all contributing in our different ways.
Perhaps maybe Lonako Center of Applied Legal Studies, right? Lidi activist na. Maybe if you can tell us and contextualize maybe we can get a better understanding.
Sure. So we're essentially a human rights organization center, but also a law clinic. So we assist people who can't afford legal services. So most of us at the organization are lawyers, so there are attorneys, there's researchers, there's advocates. And we do consider ourselves as activists. We essentially use the law to sort of bring about social change. But we also use the law to assist those who are activists themselves. So trying to change the law, who have been who's maybe being silenced by powerful corporates or the state when they're trying to advance a particular change in their community. So on the one hand, we see ourselves as activists, but we also see us using the tool of law to help others advance.
What are the biggest cases in in terms of issues? And of course, you have the right to omit some names, but what are the biggest cases you've dealt with?
So we work within 5 programs. We work across various issues, from unlawful evictions, helping people access water, electricity, sanitation, sexual violence matters. We work a lot with mine-affected communities. We help people protest. We also have a few clients that are detained, and we work on some of the prison conditions. We also help people access information, which I think is a very important one, because if you don't have the information that you need, you don't know what is it that you are entitled to. You don't know what obligations sit with the state or with any corporation. So yeah, we work across very...
it's very interesting that you say that right now with the outbreak of the coronavirus, information is very, very important right now. Now, I just want to ask you, Palesa, because you guys work within an institution, La Patelwa,
No, we get paid, yes. We are 100% donor funded, but we don't charge our clients and the partners that we work with any money.
In your personal opinion, do we have enough awareness about umsebenzi of an activist? Are people well informed? What does it mean? Or do you feel we can still improve in that?
I find that the youth is very well informed in what's happening around, but obviously there's not as much information as it should be out there. But I find the youth very keen and very interested in knowing why is the world the way it is, where does power lie, why are decisions made badly. So I find that the youth is very keen in finding out this information and challenging and asking questions. But I still think that a lot of information...
And perhaps before we let you go, Sister Palesa, who are some of the activists of our generation, according to you?
According to me, it's everyone. It ranges from students who are putting pressure on institutions of higher learning. It's school learners who are asking for proper infrastructure. It's people who are organizing protests against GBV, against corruption, asking for service delivery. It's journalists who are using their craft for various activism. It's people in the entertainment industry who are documenting what's happening, who are creating films to get certain messages across. It's people who are using their phones every day and putting pressure using social media on corporations, on the state. It's everyone.
All right.
It's everyone who's decided to take upon a cause on themselves and do what they have to do with the resources that they have.
Siswami sibonga kakhulu ithuba osinike lona ukusikwazi sixoxe nawe. Siyajabula ukuthi umsebenzi wakho umuhle uyancomeka kakhulu. Phinde futhi sikufisele nje isonto elimnandi nje kanje. Sibongela from eDaily Thetha.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, bye.
Uyezwa ke sisinokuletha ukuthi as abantu bayibona indlela ezingafani. I mean, being an activist does not require you just to be someone who is working on a day to day, but it's just you waking up and raising your voice, utilizing social media. Ukuthi nje ubike na ukuthi as in I think we should move forward towards this. And also a question probably I would have for you, Uguti, do you believe Uguti eskolweni it should be there, like the conversation of in activism?
I think it's a culture. I think I like what Palesa said. I think she said everyone's got a responsibility for other activists in their own right?
Yeah.
And I think that for me is really what is powerful. We do have social media coming in from Sbusiso Paul Sibanyoni. They are advocating for for what matters the most: free education and economic freedom. The likes of Kai Kakeshe and Ncebo Dlamini, who are #Fees Must Fall activists, are great human rights activists of our generations. Julius Malema and Floyd Chivambo are also human rights activists who are fighting for the economic freedom and use their voices to champion the needs of voiceless South Africans. To be an activist takes a lot of courage and determination. And I think that's the type of South Africa. That courage, that determination to be able to stand up for what they believe is correct. We're going to be speaking to Boitumelo Masipa, as I said, who's a communications officer at Section 27 and a youth activist. What is her definition of activism and role in the country? But I think for me, before we get Boitumelo on the screen, Melody, which are the issues do you believe that we should be advocating for right now in South Africa?
It's the housing issue is a very important one because so many people are displaced, and they live in spaces that really have challenges and they're not able to change it, and we don't realize the impact it has on a person mentally to live in a home where there's 8 people versus people who live in a space where there's 3-4 people. But so after the ad break, when we come back. Welcome back to Daily Thetha Lago SABC 1. Talking about activism and the role it plays in Mpakathini wethu, and looking back at how many years abantu have been arrested, people have risked their lives, because a lot of people don't understand ukuthi when you are an activist, at some point your life will be put in danger, and you taking that mental decision to actually do it shows ukuthi ngempela uyinikele kangakanani kulokho kufisayo to achieve with your journey as an activist. But kancane ngithi ngibeke kunendaba bese sayibona eMpumalanga, where it showcases how people are arrested who are activists in mine, and sithi ukubona kancane ngakhona indaba yakhona. Have a look.
2016 November 30th, we witnessed some of the brutality. The police shot many of our people. We were arrested. The charge was public violence. And on that day, there was no public violence. We were protesting peacefully. For the past 4 years, we have been protesting against the mine, against the power station.
First, I did like the mines, but since I've known what they are doing to us, that's when I become to be an anti-mines, because they are polluting our air. And then our water is also polluted. They are killing us. Slowly, they are killing us.
The air is polluted and people are speaking about the heavy respiratory illnesses because of these power stations and all these coal mines and the emissions that they're putting into the air. Everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, but that right is not being realized. Environmental defenders have been facing threats and intimidation of all sorts.
A human rights defender is a person who raises a voice, trying to use their right of freedom of expression, and then those people are silenced. Bazuka Ekhatebe was assassinated mysteriously. The mining companies, whenever they discover a place where they want to do some mining operations, should be in full consent of the community.
There's a level of violence that is being created by the mines because they bring division. People start hating each other based on the reason that some people are supporting the mine while others are opposed to the mine.
Akazange ifike imayini eza emphakathini thina sayibona thina la imayini siyakhile akazange izikhulume nomphakathi thina nje iyona ethatha amanzi iyowasebenzisa ukugezela kahle. Ngisaba ukuthi uma ngivela bazongihlasela ngoba lana ngoba kuthi ekseni sithi savuka kunuka upetroli la egcekeni. And namanje eminye imizi iyaqhutshekwa iyashiswa eminye imizi yakhona umuntu epolice station abakhona ukuthi balandelele lokho ngisho ukuvela nje bezobona leyo into oyibikayo.
And Jobubonage now on the insert with Kulgazi, abantu bayasaba, they're scared of speaking out as umphakathi, which is kind of painful because one of the things that I started seeing when I watched the Witty is the community is no longer involved in its own space. And it makes you ask questions of stuff like that. I mean, these big companies, Mali, how do we start raising our voices? And sometimes, thank goodness for online. Now we have a chance to fight online, go Twitter, writing petitions.
The Twitter activist. Hey. I think it's quite interesting looking there and being able to see, you know, even a person like Bazooka who was killed, standing up for something that was really important to the community, makes me just remember the likes of your Steve Biko, the likes of your Chris Hani, the likes of Ruth First, who were assassinated as activists during the apartheid times. Now it makes you think, is it something worth it right now? Is it worth it to be an activist?
You know, you trigger the thought of the young Zuleika Patel, 2006, came out and it was a big story. And and some people saw it as racism. She had the fear, which what if no school ever wants me? But people like her, as young as she is, was able to come out and say, I believe the code of conduct should change when it comes to things like that.
We do have Boitumelo Masipa, who is on our show, and she is the communications officer at Section 27 and a youth activist herself. Boitumelo Dumela.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're great, and how are you?
Thank you.
Good. Thanks for having me on your show today.
Awesome. I think just to take it back a little bit to one of the conversations we were having earlier on, is just quickly, how do you define activism?
Okay, so activist is pretty much anyone who is involved in the it's for a social cause to bring about social change.
So,
and I'll keep it as simple as that, because from that you can then understand the role and function of activists, and that is to bring change into their communities and into the country.
Boitumelo, do you believe that as compared to back in the day, today we have more opportunity, and probably it's not as dangerous as it was back in the day to become an activist?
I do agree that it is safer to be activists. Rights like freedom of expression allow more people to say and to get behind causes without fear of imprisonment. And then, of course, there's social media. It's nowadays, you don't even have to necessarily go out to the streets to start a cause. You can start a cause on social media and get some mobilization digitally, and that's also equally effective.
It's very interesting what you're saying, Boitumelo, because I'm just thinking a little bit about, we had an insert just playing just before we had you online, and we're looking at, you know, the alleged intimidation of activists in Mpumalanga at the mines, and one of them had died. Now, I want to find out if, is this communicated enough in South Africa? Do we know what activists actually go through in South Africa?
I do feel as if there is often this disengagement with activists and why they do their work that they do. And we have to understand that activists decide to dedicate their whole lives to a cause, and where they could have pursued a career that could have maybe been profitable, because of their passions, they go this profession serving people, and in itself has its own challenges. There's public expectations that activists must fulfill, they have their own, of course, they have their own interests and ambitions. So that balance between the public expectations and what they want for themselves is a difficult one, and I think that's one of the challenges perhaps activists are facing now.
And with the high expectations that come from, I think if you think about even families internally, what role do you think families play in a lot of activists' lives? Because we've seen a lot of people say, don't be an activist, I don't want to lose you, my child. Don't get into this space because you too might be affected, or we as a family can be affected. Do you believe that families are more supportive in this day and age for activism?
I'm not sorry, I'm just going to try and answer, although I'm not sure if I've understood your question correctly. But I do consider that activists necessarily, the parents, families, and communities are not always aware that activism is a career, and maybe there could be that pressure from the inside in the home, perhaps not to pursue that. I mean, a lot of parents want us to be doctors and accountants and these mainstream things. I remember growing up and not even being aware that I could be an activist and that could be something I could do for the rest of my life, and that human rights was a career. So I think the more that people say that human rights is something you can do on a daily basis, and you can make a career out of it, and I think be quite successful. I think it would be a good understanding to share.
Yeah.
Boitumelo, I just want to pick up on your point of saying it can be a career. How then does one differentiate fighting for a social cause? Or maybe you can contextualize for us when you say it can be a career. I think a lot of us have been taught that activism is fighting for people's rights, you know. It's not something that you should be getting monetary compensation for.
Yes. When you decide to go into this kind of occupation in your life, I think you accept that the end goal isn't to have a big house, isn't to drive a big...
Yeah. We're struggling a little bit there with Boitumelo's link, but I think we kind of get the gist of what she's saying. At the end of the day, you can balance the two out. It can be a career but at the same time, you can be fighting for the rights of people. It's not always about the monetary compensation of it. And I think also it's quite interesting, and we need to still pick up on that conversation about the struggles and the successes of youth activism in South Africa in our day and age. But when we do come back, we also want to speak about radical and non-radical activism. Which one is correct? Do stay with us after the break.
Sanamgela, back to Daily Thetha Lago SABC. Talking about activism, what it means and what purpose does it serve in Pakatini yetu. Pinifuti, it takes me back to the year 2016 where we saw South Africa really up in arms because I'm a student in my university of Akala during If Fees Must Fall, and we saw a lot of things, some that made us ask, what is radical protest? What is not radical? Which way is right? But also, we got to catch up with Dr. Tlaleng, who's going to give us a bit of an insight because she is a health activist. But have a look.
My name is Dr. Tlaleng Mufugeng, and I'm the founder of Nalane for Reproductive Justice, which is a civil society organization that works specifically around sexual and reproductive health and rights. And many people always ask, what is SRHR? What are these rights that you are always talking about and advocating for? Sexual and reproductive health rights speak specifically to the rights of all human beings to be who they are. All genders, sexualities, wherever you are in the world, your race, it doesn't matter what class you are. At the end of the day, we believe that autonomy, which is the right to make decisions on your body in terms of dignified care and services, we're always advocating for access to quality healthcare services, inclusive of reproductive health, because often reproductive health, everyone takes it like as if it's an added extra, but it's important. And so sexual and reproductive health rights speak to the protection and the realization of those rights in literal terms, which means if you are a young woman in South Africa who needs access to contraception, what we're advocating for is that your rights to be on quality contraception is important. Your right to accessing clinics that are nearby where you live is very important. And when you do get to the clinic, you have a right to be treated with dignity and to be respected for being a young woman who needs contraceptive. And in those instances, unfortunately, where it happens that people's rights are not protected or people are not able to access services, we always advocate for accountability for all the stakeholders, leadership people, people who are in positions of power, whether it's a clinic manager or facility manager, to ensure that when things go wrong, people, specifically young women who need services, are not delayed. Unfortunately, we know of stockouts where some clinics have continuous stockouts of very critical, sexual reproductive health services. And what we are saying is that this should not happen at all. And in my line of work, I work to assist young people in terms of comprehensive sexuality education, which is an important part of SRHR, because if you don't know what your rights are, you can't fight for them for yourself. You can't be your own advocate. But also, if you don't know how your body works, what is menstruation, what does pregnancy symptoms look like, what do I do if I don't want to be pregnant anymore, it means then you can't make those decisions for yourself.
And that was Dr. Tlaleng, health activist and commissioner at Commission of Gender Equality. Now, she's speaking about something quite interesting because Obulelaka approach of activism. And just listening to her, I think for me, what I got out of that is that she's using education, being able to educate young girls about what their rights are, what should they have access to, what type of information should they be having access to. Now, I'm just thinking, when we're going to be speaking about radical and non-radical activism, I think of Fasiha Hassan, right? Now she won the Youth Peace Prize for being able to lead the Fees Must Fall activism or the campaign in a very peaceful and non-violent way. Now, so can you Melody? Can we still justify the burning of tires, the burning of buildings, libraries? Can we still actually justify that in today's South Africa?
Well, I mean, we can't, because there's so many different ways to get your point across. But we do come from a country that has a history of using violence as the key factor of saying, I'm raising my point. And we need to move with the times and going through things like petitions, because there's different forms that you can actually fight different things. But in this moment, I think this is where I'd love to bring in Dr. Tlaleng, because she works a lot around this, because I mean, in the health factors, there were clinics that people were unhappy with the state of them. And instead of burning the clinic, people didn't have an opportunity to then write up petitions to find different conversations. But please let me welcome Dr. Tlaleng into this convo. Dr. Sawubona.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for taking time to be with us. I mean, I think we need help in understanding. We talk about radical and not radical. When we talk about fighting, putting our point across, how do we differentiate between the two?
It's important to remember that protest action, or what of course in the country as DOI, service delivery, protests, these activities or actions, right, from society and those who are marginalized in society, they don't happen in a vacuum. They happen within a context of a politics. They happen within a context of socioeconomic status and well-being. And of course, it happens in South Africa, one of apartheid and colonialism. And so when we are talking about activism, we need to understand that we cannot talk about activism and not commit ourselves to actually dealing with the root causes of discrimination, of inequality, of, again, the violence and the racial violence that has happened to people in this country. And often, people say, but the radicals, they always get such a bad name, you are radical. But I think radicalism is rooted in fighting root causes, to ending power imbalances in society, to ending discrimination in society, and more than just, as opposed to doing or being an activist within the confines of what society deems acceptable or not acceptable. Radical activism means we need to actually throw out everything that we think we know and actually get to the root causes. Words like patriarchy, people get very upset when you use those types of words. But it's important when you talk about supremacy. Those are key concepts when you're talking about radical activism. And all of the activism, all the activists, everyone has a play. But we do need to understand it within that history of how people relate to buildings, for example. How people relate to the physical structures in which they find themselves and the end that got them there. So that when they react in a certain way, we know it's informed.
Dr. Tlaleng, just a quick one. I mean, it's quite rare to see you taking up, the streets with placards, in the space that you work in. But we know, of course, you've taken on some health ministers, Is there a way to be able to say we can justify that radical activism in some spaces and not in others? I'm just thinking in your space, burning down a clinic, would that get us the change that we need?
I think we need to realize that, when the cis and the people in positions of power do not respond to the needs of people on the ground, and there's a big disconnect. When people absolutely desperate are in survival mode, unfortunately, they for themselves make certain decisions and certain choices. And I think once we understand that there's a difference between who are fighting for survival and what they think is important right now for me to survive another day, versus people who are just in corporate who perhaps have certain privileges and certain protections because of the space that they occupy every day, because of the class privilege that they, and therefore their activism may be very different.
Yes.
In 2018, 2017, we did march through the streets of Johannesburg with placards. And there was a physical demonstration, right, of young people such as myself who were feeling suffocated by the system and its lack of prioritizing our healthcare services around sexual health and reproductive health. In some instances, for example, like the UN, which I recently, have it was a different type of a strategy. So I think what's important and what I would say to young people back home is we need to strategically strategic.
Yes.
If the requirement is we go to the streets and we march with placards, let that be it. But we need to be a bit more strategic in terms of long-term, what do we want? What can we do today to get us to the long-term agenda? And I think often, sometimes, we may seem like we are not coordinated properly. Or that we are singing from a different sort of hymn book and we want the same thing. I think sometimes strategy is what's key. Strategy will often give us the results we want.
But Dr. T, I think just to jump on to the last point you speak about when you look at it long term, do you believe that activists in this day and age know how to use collaborations properly? Because I sit and I look at all the different people that are trying to do the same thing, but everyone somehow feels like they can do it better. But instead of doing it together, everyone is looking for the fame of, I'm the one that, for example,
led.
So it becomes something that I'm trying to understand. Are we lacking the strategist mentality?
I think there is a bit of a found syndrome, right? And it's something that young people speak a lot about, that there isn't enough of an intergenerational dialogue, an intergenerational sort of passing of the baton. People tend to wait and simmer on issues and not really ask for assistance. And perhaps maybe it's human nature that people that they are exposing themselves, perhaps not that they are ready, or maybe they not know as much as they think they know. And for me, collaboration is key. We cannot do anything without collaboration. If I'm working on sexual and reproductive health and rights, I need to collaborate and ask those organizations, for example, who've been in the forefront of the LGBTQA+, right? I need organizations that are talking about albinism and how those human rights and the dignity of people with albinism can get translated into my work in SRHR. And I think it's really important to also talk and call out, right? The funding models, when non-governmental organizations and civil society, their existence is depending. And often this funding comes with restrictions of which other topics or which other issues you can deal with or advocate for. And a lot of the time, that what becomes the Achilles tendon for a lot of society, that we can't work together because our funders are so strict and sometimes are just chasing numbers. And I think that the concern and the shift and the move to make our fight a human rights fight, that we actually cannot afford to put a hierarchy to the needs of people. We have to fight for all human rights. Otherwise, we will not win.
Dr. Sibonga kakhulu ukuthi wazile usinike ithuba ukuthi sixoxe now at this very time, and we think we are quarantining very well there at home. We thank you very much for your time, Dr. Tleleng. And of course, after the ad break, sikhuluma ngenkulumo ukuthi where is the future? What does the future of activism in South Africa look like after the break?
Welcome back to Daily Thetha. The activists, it's a generation now. When we started the show, we talked a little bit about what is activism and a role in our communities. What exactly is it? To try and get a better understanding for all of us in the room. Now, just to pick up on our last conversation that we had with Dr. Tleleng, we want to speak to Romeo Ramadau, who is an arts and culture activist and from the South African Youth and Culture Forum. Radicalism. He believes in that radical activism. So what does it actually mean, and what then does it mean for the future of activism in South Africa? Because people have much more avenues to be able to express themselves.
And also Upu Kakulu has been very known to be vocal on Twitter, to be able to actually go and say, Minister, I don't believe go to right, Minister, so do we know where to draw the line also when it comes to being radical? Budromo, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think on behalf of the South African creative industry, we would like to thank our government on the efforts they are making to deal with the COVID-19. And as much as we are the biggest industry that is affected, we are just saying to the artists, let's hang in there. But organizations will make sure that the industry and artists are protected.
A quick one, Romeo. A quick one there. radical activism. Now, a lot of the older generation, when they look at us, they say maybe activism is dead because they don't see that radicalism that they used to know and understand. Do you feel that there is still space in South Africa for radical activism?
Yeah, look, I feel, unfortunately, some of the things you were saying is, I think, the issue of network. But I feel that activism is not something that should, because when you are an activist, first of all, you are going to be hated by a lot of people. I remember my mother used to say to me sometimes, hey, they will kill you, my son. But as a mom, as a young person in South Africa, I feel like I'm dead because I'm denied a lot of opportunity. I can't access resources. We don't have opportunities that a lot of young people, especially those in rural areas, can be able to access. But I feel there is a space for young people. But however, our own political leaders, they understand that young people are the game changers. Young people are the only ones who can shape the country. They make sure that they deny young people resources and opportunities, more particularly those young rural areas. So at the end of the day, many young people are scared to become activists because they know that if you are an activist, you are going to be hated, you are going to be marginalized. Like in the creative industry, our organization, SACAIF, is one of the organizations that many institutions of government that fund are, they try to sub us because they understand that we are trying to bring change and we are fighting for equal opportunities.
My apologies.
But I feel that the space is there. Young people just don't have to be scared. They have to rise. Because you can't expect to be an activist and expect an easy road. When you choose the decision to become an activist, it means you want to be selfless. You want to serve your community. You want to serve your country. You want to make sure that policies that don't work in the country for the people on the ground, they work for the people on the ground. And the change will be easy. The change won't fall on a silver platter. So we must make it happen. That's why when we are activists, we fight for a better life for everybody.
Yes.
Even those who are voiceless, we make sure that we use our voices to make a difference that will impact our people in a positive way.
Just a quick one, Romeo. You're speaking about bringing positive change to the young people. Is it then justifiable to do it in a violent manner? That's what I would like to understand.
No, look, us as the creative industry and SACAIF, we always educate our members to say that being a radical person, it doesn't necessarily mean that you must go and burn down the Department of Arts and Culture. If my problem is with Minister Thetha, or our problem is with the officials in every sphere of government, and talk about the 3 levels of spheres of government, from municipality, provincial government, and national government, then we must push radicalism and mobilize the industry to remove those who are actually the stumbling block. Because if we go and ban our municipalities, we ban our libraries, and we ban our department, we are creating a bigger problem because the same money that is supposed to help us to create opportunities and make it better for our people is going to be reinvested back into building the institution that we have banned. So we are saying to the South African, not only young people, because not only young people who are marching for basic service delivery. We are saying when we are fighting for opportunities, let's not ban things.
Sorry to disturb you, my brother, and I'm very grateful. Unfortunately, due to time, I have to let you go. But those 2 key points you've said have been very critical in our conversation, and we thank you at Daily Thetha for just standing by for us and being able to just talk to us. As we wrap up the show in conversation, the biggest thought you must always keep in mind is that everyone and anyone can do it, but you just need to choose the cause you want to fight for.
And I like what Romeo said, being radical does not mean we then need to go and vandalize what is ultimately assisting us. It's quite important for us to keep that at the back of our heads. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you again 10:11 o'clock on the SABC 1.